r/WallstreetBets is where the world's worst gamblers go to gloat about their losses. And when I say the world's worst gamblers, I don't mean in terms of degeneracy, like Las Vegas, for example. I just mean somehow people in this subreddit consistently lose enough money to buy a house, even with the current prices. Now, of course, there are some wins on this subreddit. They wouldn't be gamblers if they never won anything. But even when people do post their wins, they're usually much smaller than people's losses. Like, for example, this guy's up 30K on his portfolio. But if you just look around like a little bit, there's this guy that lost 40K. But at least with this guy, he took some of his money before losing everything and bought a house. There are lots of people that lost a lot of money and didn't do that. But today, we're gonna look over some of the most insane losses on this subreddit, including a guy who lost all the money his grandma gave him after she died. Right after a word from our sponsor. Today's video is sponsored by Rocket Money, the easy-to-use finance app that helps you save more and manage your money better. So you guys know I don't like having a bunch of subscription services. I just don't. I have complained about services like Netflix raising their prices for whatever reason, and Rocket Money will help you find and cancel those unwanted or forgotten subscriptions. Once you connect your bank account, Rocket Money will identify all your subscriptions and put them into one list so you don't have to manually look for them. And from there, you can select the ones you don't want anymore and cancel them. And Rocket Money may even be able to help you cancel some subscriptions with just a few taps. The app will also identify your top spending categories with insights on how to better stay within your budget. And Rocket Money will notify you of upcoming expenses to help you avoid overdrafts or late fees. Rocket Money can also automate your savings. You simply choose your savings goal, pick a frequency at which you want to save, and watch your savings grow. And Rocket Money will automatically scan your bills and look for potential ways to lower them. With just a couple taps, Rocket Money can help you negotiate your bills with your internet service provider or your cell phone provider. So what are you waiting for? Take control of your finance today by going to rocketmoney.com/spatnz, and that link will be in the description as well as a pinned comment. And that link again is rocketmoney.com/spatnz. And yeah, thank you Rocket Money for sponsoring the video. I already use this app, so this is pretty easy for me. And let's get back into it. Okay, so the guy in Wallstreetbets who lost his grandma's inheritance, he lost about 200K, which is a lot of money to lose, let alone have evaporate in a day. And the most insane part about this is honestly this guy's portfolio. He put half his money in this stock called Vroom, which was a website to buy and sell used cars, kind of like Carvana. And if he knew anything about this industry, he probably would have known it was going to implode very soon. Because most people don't want to buy a car online, but they'll happily sell a car online. So all these websites had a massive influx of people selling their cars to them, but not buying them. Because like, why would you buy a car without physically looking at it or driving it? But if you're selling a car, having them barely look at your car is perfect. It is like actually the worst business model. Because even if you think your car is in good condition, it just makes sense to not have someone look at it too closely, because why would you want them to do that? Because if they find a problem you're not aware of, they're gonna give you less money. So these online car websites really just benefited people selling their cars, especially since most of these sites were overpaying for a while. And with the power of hindsight, Carvana has now been accused of fraud. So their business model has not been exactly working for them. And you would expect smaller companies in the same space to also have the same problems, if not worse, because they're smaller company. And Vroom was a smaller company. They must have bought this stock during COVID when this stuff looked like it was gonna actually, go somewhere. Because besides COVID happening, this business model kind of sucked. So this guy bet his grandma's inheritance on a stock called Vroom, and he also bought calls for Tesla and the SPY. And I don't know exactly what this guy bet on with his calls, but whatever he bet on, it was a bad gamble because he lost it all. Now, when I first heard about this, I was kind of annoyed this guy bet his grandma's inheritance on stocks like this because he was just gambling. That's all this guy was doing. And thankfully, this was also a line for Wallstreetbets because everyone started clowning on this guy and, calling him a bad person for, gambling his grandma's inheritance. Like, this dude's grandma saved up for however long, gave this dude an insane amount of money, and he just gambled it away. It's a really horrible thing to do to the person who just gave you a bunch of money in their passing. And using the power of hindsight, if this guy just bought Tesla and bought the SPY and didn't gamble with it, he would be fine. But for some reason, he saw the two more stable stocks and was like, I'm gonna gamble with those, and then bought the Vroom stock. Now, this user did not delete their account, but they have not been active ever since they posted this. The last activity they have is a comment and reply to their own post saying they bought calls for the SPY and Tesla. That's it. They haven't been active since. And I just hope they stop gambling because this is definitely a problem for this guy. And the craziest part about this story is the fact that this wasn't the only time someone on Wallstreetbets gambled their grandma's inheritance and lost all of it, or at least most of it. About 6 months ago, a guy with no real concept of money, that's the best way to put it, gambled $700,000 of their $800,000 inheritance from their grandmother. And it's pretty simple how they lost a lot of this money. They put that $700,000 into Intel stock. And the most unfortunate part about this is that they lost 1/3 of this in a day. If you look at the comments on this post, there's a guy replying with a screenshot of his phone. And it's him looking at this Reddit post with a notification saying Intel dropped 17%. And in total, Intel has dropped 30% since then and has not recovered. Now, I feel a little bad for this guy because he's clearly stressing really hard about this. Like, he clearly has guilt for doing this. And it is totally understandable to stress when you just lost, like, you know, 1/3 of your grandma's inheritance. And this person definitely was not gambling nearly as hard as, like, a lot of people in these subreddits. They had a bunch of reasons as to why they thought Intel would do better, and they weren't actually that off base. Like, there was a lot of reasons to assume Intel would do well. The government has been pumping money into Intel. But it's totally understandable to be stressed out when you just lost 30% of your grandma's inheritance, especially since their grandma is now a meme on the subreddit. People are still making posts referencing this guy's grandma. But at the very least, they didn't lose everything on Intel, unlike the guy who bet on Vroom. But one stock on Wallstreetbets seems to be responsible for a lot of the losses, and that one stock is GameStop. If you don't recall, the GameStop stock had this huge upward swing and then fall. Basically, a guy named Roaring Kitty noticed a lot of hedge funds were hedging against GameStop, so he made this big video explaining why GameStop would be a good stock to buy, and Wallstreetbets loved this. GameStop instantly became a huge meme. Everyone kept saying, we like the stock. Even Jim Cramer on TV said, we like the stock.
We like the stock. We like the stock.
And the reason they had to say we just like the stock is because market manipulation is illegal. And besides screwing over hedge funds, there was no real reason to actually buy GameStop stock. Okay, there just wasn't. It's a brick and mortar store that generally people do not like because all they do is lowball you on your game offers. But buying GameStop stock became a huge thing. So you had lots of people jumping in to buy GameStop stock with their entire life savings. And it's not an exaggeration. This guy took out a second mortgage on his house to buy GameStop stock and went from 35K to 5 million back down to 300,000. And Wallstreetbets has a general rule I see repeated in the comments a lot, which is if it's good enough to screenshot, it's good enough to sell. Which, yeah, that's pretty good advice. And this user should have sold when they made millions of dollars, but didn't. And luckily, this guy did not lose everything, but he would have been a lot better off if he just sold it when it was high. And the top comment of this post pretty much summarizes everyone's feelings about it. But it doesn't always turn out so well for people who lose their money on Wallstreetbets. Because if you've noticed, a lot of these people are not gambling their own money. So far, we've had 2 people who got inheritance and 1 guy who pulled out a second mortgage. And the mortgage guy is more or less his own money, right? He still went into debt to gamble, but still, it's more or less his own money. But this next user just straight up bet money they didn't have, and Robinhood came knocking. So according to this guy's story, he started positive about 32K on Robinhood, and they made some risky bets and managed to lose all of it. And according to them, they were still positive $700 on the Robinhood app. But they got this email saying they owed $4.4 million. And they actually did owe that $4.4 million. So after this happened, they made an update post clarifying everything that's happened afterward. So they said they lost their job and then lost their life savings pretty much the same time. So they moved back in with their sister and got a different job to start paying all this money back. They're hopeful and they're just betting on one stock called Fubbo TV. And I don't know anything about this stock and I'm not gonna look into it, but generally speaking, everyone agrees don't bet on one stock like this guy's currently doing. But I am seriously impressed they picked themselves up and kept moving along because, oh my God, $4.4 million in debt for gambling. That's crazy. And that's really why you shouldn't get into this kind of stuff unless you really, really know what you're getting yourself into. And then this guy made an illegal trade and then somehow owes $26 septillion. And I don't know how that happens, but yeah, that's the biggest loss on the subreddit. Besides this guy who lost $10 million in GameStop. Like this guy if you're new, click the answer down, check out all my content, and blue sky down below. And hey, have a good one.